There's a moment silent, small, but powerful when a woman checks her phone and sees nothing. No reply, no message, just absence. And that moment, while brief to you, becomes eternity in her mind. You may think silence is harmless. You may tell yourself that you're just busy or that you'll reply later. But to her, that delay opens a door to a storm she never asked to walk through. And in that storm, your silence doesn't stay quiet, it screams. It screams through her thoughts, her memories, her insecurities. And suddenly, the woman who once smiled at your name now stares at her screen, wondering where she went wrong. It begins innocently. She gives you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you're working. Maybe you fell asleep. Maybe your battery died. But as minutes turn to hours and hours into a cold day, her thoughts start to twist. She replays the last thing she said to you was, "It too much? Did she come off too strong? Was her honesty too heavy?" And in that silence, she becomes both the prosecutor and the victim in a courtroom of self-blame. You don't just leave her waiting, you leave her unraveling. When a woman truly cares, she doesn't just want words. She wants presence. She wants to feel that her vulnerability didn't fall into a void. But when you don't respond, she starts pulling at every thread of memory. She go back to your last conversation, not just remembering it, but dissecting it. Did you seem distant? Were your replies shorter than usual? Did you even seem interested? And slowly, she begins to rewrite history with pain as her pen. The version of you that once made her feel safe now makes her question everything. But the most heartbreaking part is this: your silence doesn't just affect how she sees you, it changes how she sees herself. She begins to wonder if she's too much, if she's hard to love, if maybe, just maybe, she imagined everything between you. Her confidence starts to wear thin, her sparkle dims, and she carries the weight of your silence like a scar only she can see. You may think you're avoiding conflict, protecting her, or buying time. But what you're really doing is teaching her to doubt her worth. And as she walks through this quiet storm alone, she will grow. Not because of your absence, but in spite of it. She'll start to see the pattern. She'll recognize that love doesn't hide when it's inconvenient. Real love doesn't stay silent when it knows someone is waiting to be seen, heard, and valued. And as that realization sets in, the version of her that waited by the phone will slowly vanish. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. The woman who once stayed up hoping you'd respond will start sleeping peacefully, not because you messaged, but because she stopped expecting you to. The woman who once doubted her worth because you were silent will now hold her head high, knowing silence isn't proof of her flaw but of your failure to see her value. She stopped rereading old texts, not because she forgot, but because she finally understands that love is a conversation, not a question mark. So the next time you choose to ignore, delay, or disappear, remember this: while you are silent, she is evolving. While you hold back, she is rising. And one day, when you try to come back, she'll no longer be standing where you left her. Because a woman who walks through the storm of your silence and survives it becomes a force no silence can ever shake again. When a man chooses not to respond, what he often underestimates is the weight of his silence on a woman who truly cares. To him, silence might feel neutral, even peaceful, a moment of rest from emotional exchange. But to her, that silence is not empty. It is loud, it is echoing, and it creates a storm she never saw coming. Her mind doesn't sit still during your absence. It begins to spin, filling the quiet with fears, theories, and doubts. And the cruel irony is that most of those thoughts are not rooted in anger toward you, they are rooted in doubt about herself. A woman who once smiled when she saw your name now wonders if she misread your intentions, if she was too open, too available, too hopeful. Silence creates a vacuum, and in that vacuum, Her heart tries to make sense of what went wrong when all she wanted was connection. She begins to replay every word she sent, every joke she made, every moment she trusted you with a piece of herself, and now she wonders if that trust was misplaced. When you don't respond, she doesn't just feel ignored, she feels erased. She asks herself if her words even mattered, if her emotions were valid, and soon she begins to silence herself before you even get the chance to respond. That's the damage done. Her vulnerability was not rejected with cruel words. It was abandoned in silence, which is more haunting than any argument. In the storm of that silence, she starts imagining conversations you never had, goodbyes you never gave, and intentions you never clarified. Her peace is disrupted not by what you said, but by what you didn't say. And worse, she begins to see that the man who once made her feel seen now makes her question her very visibility. She walks through her days with a cloud over her head, one you can't see, but she feels with every heartbeat. Your silence isn't just a moment of quiet, it is a signal. It tells her where she stands. It forces her to measure her worth not by who she is, but by how long she waits to hear back. And even when she tells herself not to care, her heart betrays her, because when a woman gives you space in her heart, your silence becomes the loudest presence in her life. She might hold it in, put on a brave face, keep busy, laugh with friends, post something lighthearted, but in the quiet corners of her mind, she's still wondering why you didn't care enough to reply. And little by little, that storm of silence begins to change her, not into someone colder, but into someone wiser, more guarded, more aware of what attention should feel like and what love should never make her question. Because once she understands, that silence can be a message. She will stop reading it as a maybe and start hearing it as a no. When a woman doesn't hear from you, the silence doesn't stay still. It spins, it swirls, it spirals into something darker, deeper, and far more damaging than you may ever realize. What starts as a moment of quiet quickly becomes an echo chamber of self-doubt, and in that chamber, she begins to question not just your intentions, but her own value. She asks herself why the conversation stopped, why your interest faded, why the warmth in your words cooled without warning. She scanned through her own text like a detective searching for evidence, trying to pinpoint the moment where everything shifted. And the cruel thing is, there may be no shift at all, just a choice you made to withdraw, without explanation, without closure. But her heart doesn't understand silence the way yours does. Her heart fills the blanks with insecurity, wondering what she did to deserve being ignored. Her mind replays the last messages, the last call, the last time you made her feel like she mattered. And slowly, that spiral of thought drags her from curiosity to anxiety, from confusion to self-blame. She'll sit in that space, convincing herself not to overthink, telling herself you're probably just busy or distracted. But even those words begin to feel like lies she's using to protect herself from the truth she's too afraid to admit. She'll look in the mirror and start to see not what's beautiful about her, but what might be unlovable, unwanted, unseen. She'd think maybe she cared too much, maybe she showed her feelings too soon, maybe she was too honest when she should have played it cool. The spiral doesn't stop at your silence, it keeps pulling at her heart until it convinces her she is the problem. And the saddest part is she won't even be mad at you at first. She'd be disappointed in herself for trusting, for hoping, for believing that your energy matched hers. That's the cost of delayed response. It doesn't just delay the message. It delays her peace, delays her healing, delays her ability to feel secure in what she thought was real. The spiral of doubt is not loud or dramatic. It's quiet, almost invisible from the outside, but inside it erodes her belief in herself. It turns her vibrant colors into gray hesitation. It silences her voice before she even types. It makes her second guess if reaching out again would be desperation instead of love. And slowly, piece by piece, the girl who once felt proud of how open and genuine she was will begin to shrink, to close off, to build a wall not out of anger, but out of self-protection. All because silence isn't just about waiting for a reply, it's about being left in emotional freefall with no reassurance, no explanation, no anchor to hold on to when her heart is spiraling through a storm she never saw coming, in a space where she's now unsure whether her feelings were ever safe with you to begin with. When you don't respond, she doesn't walk away immediately. Instead, she stands still in the middle of a silent battlefield where two forces begin to collide. Inside her, hope and reality. Hope is soft, persistent, and deeply loyal. It whispers that you care, that something must have come up, that your silence is not a sign of disinterest but a momentary pause. Hope defends you, builds excuses for you, rewrites the narrative in your favor. It tells her to wait just a little longer, just another hour, another day. But as time passes, reality starts to speak louder. Reality has no sugar in its tone. It doesn't wrap its words in comfort. It simply points to what's true, that when someone wants to talk to you, they do. That effort is never inconsistent when feelings are genuine. And that silence, no matter how nicely she packages it, starts to look a lot like avoidance. But still, she doesn't give up on you easily. She wants to believe you didn't mean to leave her in this space. She checks her phone again, not just out of habit, but out of hope, because maybe this time your name will pop up. Maybe this time you'll explain everything and she'll be able to breathe again. But the longer she waits, the more tired her hope becomes. It's a brutal tug-of-war. One moment she smiles at the memory of your voice. The next, she's staring blankly into a silence that says nothing and means everything. She defends you to herself while reality stands in the corner with folded arms, asking her why she keeps trying to revive a conversation that died in your hands. And though she wants to stay soft, loving, and understanding, your absence starts to feel like abandonment wrapped in politeness. She doesn't want to overreact, but she also doesn't want to be blind. So she lives in limbo, unsure whether she's being patient or being played. This conflict inside her isn't just emotional, it's exhausting. It takes energy to believe in someone who isn't showing up. It takes strength to give the benefit of the doubt when the doubt keeps growing. And while hope makes her reread your old messages with a smile, reality makes her wonder why the man who once texted her, "Good morning," can't even send a simple reply now. These two forces, hope and reality, clash again and again, leaving her torn between waiting a little longer or walking away for good. And perhaps the most painful part of it all is that she doesn't want to choose. She doesn't want to give up on you, but she also doesn't want to keep giving herself to someone who only shows up when it's convenient. So she sits there, not because she's weak, but because her heart is still fighting for a story that your silence keeps trying to end. And every second you stay silent, reality gains more ground while hope grows a little quieter inside her aching heart. When you stop responding, she doesn't just wait, she rewinds. Not once or twice, but over and over again, until every word, every laugh, every pause is dissected under the microscope of confusion. Her mind becomes a reel of memories on loop, playing back scenes you may have already forgotten, but ones she can't stop reliving because she's trying to understand where it all went wrong. That beautiful conversation where she felt you genuinely cared, the voice note that made her smile, the way you called her name like it mattered. Suddenly all of it feels distant, like a dream she's now waking up from with empty hands. She didn't ask for this reflection, but your silence pushes her into it. And she can't help but start overanalyzing moments that once felt pure. She rereads old chats, scans for changes in your tone, wonders if your emojis became fewer, if your replies became shorter. What once seemed natural now feels suspicious, and what once felt mutual now feels lopsided. And the painful part is, she's not trying to prove you wrong, she's trying to find evidence that her heart didn't lie. That the connection she felt wasn't just in her head. But every time she replays the moments and still finds no answer, her chest tightens just a bit more. Her brain tries to make logic out of your silence, but her heart keeps throwing her back into memory. She starts to rewrite everything, even the good parts, because now the ending feels fake. And if the ending was this quiet, this cold, then how could the beginning have been real? That's the dangerous power of your silence. It doesn't just end the story, it makes her question the entire narrative. The memories she once held on to for comfort are now tainted with doubt. And slowly, her laughter in those memories starts to sound naive. She doesn't want to think this way. She wants to believe you meant it all. But the longer you stay distant, the more those memories lose color. The warmth in your words now feels rehearsed. The promises feel shallow. The effort feels calculated. And through it all, she sits there quietly, trying not to cry. Not because of what happened, but because she no longer knows what was real. Your silence doesn't just hurt her present, it poisons her past. And that is a wound that doesn't just ache, it lingers. Because now she's not just grieving your absence, she's grieving the version of you she believed in. The version of herself that was open and trusting. The version of the story she thought you were writing together. And as she rewinds again and again and again, hoping to find the one moment where she misunderstood you, what she keeps finding instead is a series of signs she missed. Moments she explained away, feelings she fought for alone while believing you were holding the other end just as tightly as she was at first. She doesn't link your silence to her self-worth, but over time, the connection forms on its own quietly and painfully. She begins to internalize your absence, not just as a lack of response, but as a reflection of how much she matters to you, or rather, how little. And that's where the most dangerous transformation begins, not on the outside, not in loud tears or public breakdowns, but in the slow erosion of how she sees herself. You might think you're simply not ready to talk, or that your silence is neutral, harmless, even respectful in some twisted way. But what you don't see is how deeply it reshapes the way she carries her own heart. She starts questioning her own sensitivity, wondering why she feels too deeply, why she cares so much, why she expects basic communication and consistency. She blames herself for expecting the bare minimum, for believing in effort, for believing that if she showed you love, you'd show her respect. Every unanswered message becomes a reflection in the mirror, one that doesn't tell her the truth, but convinces her of a lie, that she's not enough. And it's not always loud, this doubt. Sometimes it's quiet. It sneaks in when she's dressing up, when she's about to post a photo, when she sees couples walking by. Those small moments where she used to feel sure of herself are now laced with the ache of wondering why she wasn't worth even a reply. Your silence becomes a weapon she uses on herself. She starts overthinking her tone, her timing, her value. Maybe she talked too much. Maybe she showed she cared too quickly. Maybe she should have been colder, more detached, more like the women who don't flinch when someone pulls away. And that's the most tragic part. She starts wishing she was someone else, just to avoid feeling this way again. Her self-worth, once strong and vibrant, begins to dim beneath the weight of unspoken rejection. She no longer walks into a room with the same energy. She no longer trusts as openly. She becomes hesitant with her laughter, cautious with her affection, guarded with her heart. And it's not because she changed, but because your silence taught her that loving without assurance is dangerous. You didn't just disappear from the conversation, you disappeared from the space she had made for you in her heart. And in doing so, you made her question why she ever believed she could be enough for someone who never had the courage to simply say, "I'm not coming back." And even though she will heal, even though she will rise again, stronger, wiser, more radiant than ever, There is a version of her you'll never meet again. The version who would have loved you purely, fully, without walls. That version of her died quietly in the days you didn't speak, buried beneath all the messages you never answered, in the silence where she was forced to believe she simply wasn't worth the words you never had the heart to give. There comes a moment not with anger, not with fireworks, not even with tears, but with quiet acceptance where she finally lets go. It's not always something dramatic or visible to the world. Sometimes it happens in the stillness of her room, as she sits with her phone in her hand one last time, reading your last message, rereading her unanswered words, and realizing that she can't hold on to something that refuses to hold her back. It's not that she stopped caring. It's that she cared long enough without being cared for in return. The letting go doesn't come because she no longer wants you. It comes because she finally understands that you were never holding her the way she was holding you. And in that moment, something inside her heart shifts. She no longer searches for your name, no longer checks if you've seen her story, no longer waits for a response that won't come. She stops measuring her worth in read receipts, in delayed replies, in broken expectations. She stops whispering excuses on your behalf, stops fighting battles you weren't even present for. That moment of letting go is sacred not because she's free of pain, but because she chooses herself over the silence that's been stealing pieces of her spirit. She realizes she can't keep giving her softness to someone who treats it like a burden. She no longer sees your silence as a question mark, but as a full stop. And in that still moment, she lets go of the version of you she had built in her mind, the version that cared, that tried, that saw her. Because the real version, the one that left her on read, the one that disappeared when she needed clarity, is the one she can no longer make excuses for. The moment she lets go isn't about giving up on love, it's about giving up on confusion. She no longer wants to decode silences, to wait in limbo, to write chapters in a book where you stopped showing up halfway through. And though it hurts, though it aches in places no one else can see, she chooses to close the door gently. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Because she finally understands that love, real love, doesn't leave people wondering if they're enough. And maybe you'll never know the exact moment she moved on. Maybe you'll wake up one day and feel the absence of her energy, her attention, her heart. But by then, she will have already stopped trying to prove her worth in places where she was only ever met with silence. She will have walked away, not loudly, not dramatically, but with grace, because when she loved fully, and when she let go, she did it with the same strength. Not because you didn't matter to her, but because, in the end, she finally mattered enough to herself to stop waiting for someone who never had the courage to meet her in the space where love required presence, not just potential. So now you know, silence isn't just silence to her. It's a weight, a wound, a quiet unraveling of everything she thought you were building together. Behind every unread message, behind every long pause, there is a heart trying to make sense of an absence that never had the courage to explain itself. You may not see it, but in the silence you leave behind, she questions, she breaks, she heals, and eventually she becomes someone who no longer looks for your response at all. What goes on in her mind when you don't respond is far more than overthinking. It's a battle between hope and truth, memory and reality, love and self-preservation. She grows through your silence, yes, but don't mistake her growth as a blessing you gave. It's a strength she found in herself when she realized you wouldn't show up. This is your reminder. If you care, say it. If you're unsure, be honest. If you're leaving, don't do it in silence. Because every time you choose to disappear without a word, you don't just lose her. You lose the chance to be remembered as someone who respected her heart. In the end, she'll be okay. But the question is, will you ever be the man who is strong enough to show up with words when silence was easier? That's not just a moment of reflection. That's the moment of truth,